Mixing in some funk and R&B with our rock and roll, it's the story of Chic coming up next with author Chris Sutton on Booked on Rock.
We're totally booked.
Rock and roll!
Well, I think I'll leave you to your reading.
Little Hand says it's time to rock and roll.
Rock and roller!
We are totally booked.
Everybody, welcome back to Booked on Rock, the podcast for those about to read and rock. Excited to have back a friend of the podcast for another guest visit, Chris Sutton. He is the author of the book titled The Chic Organisation, Every Album, Every Song, part of Sonic Bond's great series On Track. Welcome back, Chris. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. This is the, I think I've told you before, this is the sixth time now that I've been on.
You're up there. You're in the top upper half. And from what you were telling me before we started recording, I know we've got some more visits coming up soon, which, we could talk about if you'd like. We could get to that, but let's talk about Chic, or more specifically, the Chic Organization. That's important because that's an umbrella term that's used for a collective of musicians who appear on these records that you cover in the book. But at the heart of it are two guys. One of them has produced several rock albums, which we'll talk about, but let's talk about the two main guys and the umbrella that is the Chic Organization.
So at the heart of this, it's Bernard Edwards and Nile Rodgers going back into the 1970s. Nile on guitar, as everyone knows, and Bernard Edwards, the phenomenal bass player, and they owned the Chic Organisation name, and they brought in people they knew to play the other instruments. They would use regular musicians, and they not only worked on the Chic brand, which people know, but as Nile still tells people to this day in concert, they worked on other people's records, produced, brought their own musicians in, wrote. But because these records were under other people's names, I know Nile still thinks to this day that people perhaps are not aware of exactly how widespread the Chic Organisation is on records in the 1970s. So if you go and see him live, for example, he'll tell you, well, this is Diana Ross songs we'll be doing now. Bowie, we played on this and we did this. So the biggest selling albums by David Bowie, Madonna, and Diana Ross for some considerable time were all ones produced by Nile Rodgers and featuring the Chic Organisation.
Now, Rodgers at one time was a member of a touring version of the Sesame Street TV show.
Yeah.
Take us back to the beginning of how Chic formed.
Well, they started up, I think Bernard Edwards was asked to put a band together to play on the road for a singing group called New York City, who had a big hit with I'm Doing Fine Now, which came out in the mid-70s. And he put a band together, got Nile Rodgers in for that, and that went well. They then formed a band called New York City themselves, and they started recording and doing covers, and eventually this led on to the Chic brand name being set up, and they went off with that in about 1977. It's very, very interesting, I think, the early years of Chic, how they get together and how they bring in these phenomenal musicians. And it's a very, very identifiable brand that they have, isn't it? I mean, you can hear it running through all those key records in the 70s from the people that we've just mentioned, but mainly the Chic Organisation. And I guess Sister Sledge would be the other one that people would probably know that they work strongly on as well.
The most recognizable part of the Chic sound, probably Nile Rodgers' rhythm guitar. Tell us about his guitar of choice and why that's his go-to guitar.
Yeah, he's hitmaker guitar and his style. He actually developed it. There was a song which came out in the mid-70s called Scorpio by Dennis Coffey. And if you listen to that kind of chukka guitar playing that Nile kind of patents, he's very evident on that. And that's one of the big components of Chic sound, as everybody knows. As time goes on, and actually experiments with even playing rock guitar. There's some solos on the early 80s Chic output. If I just played you the solo, you'd be going, oh, who's this? You know, which rock band is this I'm listening to? And it's actually Nile Rodgers. Key one there would be the title track of the Real People album. And he plays some absolutely scorching lead guitar on that. It sounds nothing like Nile Rodgers at all. But it's that kind of the rhythm and the groove and the feel that runs through most of their records, sprinkled with ballads as well. But when they hit that groove, it's just phenomenal, really phenomenal.
Yeah, we can't forget the importance of Bernard Edwards and his bass playing. According to Nile, Bernard has a unique technique. Talk about Bernard's approach to playing, and it came out of the fact that he didn't want to use a pick.
No, he doesn't use a pick, which is surprising. He tends to play with his fingers and kind of plucking kind of style. And I mean, he was interviewed once and he didn't even know what strings were on his bass at all. He hadn't changed them in years. He'd used the same strings. He was asked what strings he played, and he said, whichever strings come with this bass. He sets a kind of a standard, I think, in bass playing. And I'm going to say in the disco kind of genre. And, this was kind of very, very tricky when I was getting into music. I'm not sure how it was for you, Eric, but you were kind of in kind of tribes and groups. And that was what you liked and what you did. But I never kind of sat in with that. If you asked me what kind of music I was into growing up, I would have said glam rock and heavy rock and prog rock, and that was my thing. But I was quite happy diving off into other areas. I don't know if that's the same for you.
Yeah, I didn't know which group I really felt like I belonged to most. I could kind of go from one group to the other. I could be the alt rock guy or the gothic rock guy with The Cure, or glam rock or 70s rock.
I think it was even a case of when I was offering to do this book, and I spoke to Sonic Bond, Stephen there, about what I wanted to do next, and I kind of imagined his reaction at the other end. I mean, he was glad to have it because it filled a kind of a gap in the range at the time when I started working on it. But I remember back at the time when some of these records came out, you couldn't go around to some people I knew and say, "Oh, that record, I Want Your Love by Chic, that's great." They'd be thinking, what's going on with him?
Right. I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah. Because people label them as a disco band.
Yeah.
And that's not really a fair label. They're part of the disco era. But
yeah, that's broadly because the records were played on the radio, and, you could dance to these records.
But it's funk, it's R&B, it's rock and roll.
There was a very famous feature in the New Musical Express by a journalist called Danny Baker, who you may have heard of, but he became quite well known in the UK. And he did this kind of review of Chic's Say Chic album, where he was going, you wouldn't expect me to say, but this is a great album, these are great songs, and I love it, and I'll passionately defend it. And he was anticipating flack coming his way. I think they don't really get the credit they deserve at all for what they did and what they achieved and what's going on musically in these records. One of the advantages of doing a book like this, you may have had the same experiences. You keep having to listen to the songs again and again and again and again and again. What's it like on headphones? What's it like on stereo? And you find all these details and things, and you're just constantly blown away by things you hadn't noticed, things that you've discovered. What they wanted was for Diana Ross to go global and huge, and not just be lumped into the Tamla Motown kind of bracket. And they knew that Nile and Bernard were capable of delivering that, and controversially so, as we're undoubtedly going to talk about, I would imagine, because Tamla were not happy with what they got completely. And this is a complaint that you would see coming through from time to time regularly of, well, you've made our artists sound like Chic. And you're thinking, yeah. The Johnny Mathis album, for example, sounds exactly like Johnny Mathis singing with Chic. And that took decades to get released because they sat on it because it didn't sound right to the company.
We can't forget Tony Thompson, Chic's drummer, powerhouse player. Yeah, and an interesting story. The way things start with him in the beginning is that he learned early on to simplify his kit and learn how to groove thanks to Nile and Bernard. This is from an interview he did in 2005. And this interview, the quotes are in the book. They had him remove a lot of the parts of his kit, right? And they said, you don't need all that stuff. Let's just focus on the groove.
Absolutely correct. I mean, that's the big thing. if you take a song like and you can take any Chic song, but the one that I drive people mad with most, genuinely, is probably Spacer by Sheila B. Devotion, and it's a song that almost anybody, I think, listening to this podcast will know when they hear it straight away. It's been covered and been sampled. But the groove at the heart of this is just absolutely to die for. These guys are playing, which is Niall Bernard, Tony Thompson, Sammy Figueroa. Just play this incredible, just relentless groove that they get into. And they used to do it in one go as well. If it kind of went wrong, they would do it again, start to finish. There's no kind of patching parts in or anything of that nature.
Right. They moved fast during recording sessions, you write.
Oh, dear God, yeah. I mean, to the point where they were recording the Say Chic album and the Sister Sledge We Are Family album simultaneously in 2 studios. So they're doing both albums simultaneously, and the horn section are coming in and doing brass parts for songs they don't even know what they're for. I interviewed the horn section and told them that they were on the second album by Sister Sledge, and they didn't even know.
They were given the charts. They just said, okay.
It would be like, okay, we're going to do this, and they come the melody. Oh, you want it kind of like this, don't they? But they wouldn't know. I mean, this is what they're telling me. They didn't know that they were going to be I Want Your Love, for example, doing those brass accents at all until the record came out.
Rob Sabino on keys too, right? In the early days.
Yeah, Rob Sabino. I mean, Chic had some wonderful, wonderful keyboards, piano players, and Sabino is a guy who runs through pretty much everything that Chic do. Rob Sabino. He would be the 4th probably member of the core band, which would be musically guitar, Bernard Edwards bass, Rob Sabino keyboards, Tony Thompson drums. That would be the 4. And then Figueroa comes in on percussion. Other piano players are brought in. So instrumentally, that would be the core of the Chic Organisation band. If
I'm not mistaken, Sammy Figueroa, I think he's on David Lee Roth's Crazy from the Heat, the EP with California Girls. And
I don't know offhand, but he's on everything pretty much. There's nobody listening to this podcast, I think, who won't have Sammy Figueroa somewhere lurking on their shelves.
Yeah, let me just check the credits because I feel like I've seen that name. Let's see. Yeah, Sammy Figueroa. Let's see. Personnel. There he is, Sammy Figueroa. Percussion. Yeah. He's on all 4 of those songs on Dave's EP.
Yeah, he's great.
The first Chic hit, that comes from the self-titled debut album from 1977, the song Dance, 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 Yowza, Yowza, Yowza. The title inspired by a film starring Gig Young.
Yeah. Was it They Shoot Horses, Don't They? I think it was the film. Yeah. I can't say I've ever seen the film. I was aware it was from there. And it's a decent starter. And you can hear Luther Vandross singing on that. He's part of the big chorus. At that stage, when they did that song, Dance, 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 and not even Tony Thompson's on that song. They used a session drummer instead. You can kind of hear where they're going with it. I don't think it's the best of Chic's singles, has its moments. However, Everybody Dance, which is the next one that comes along, is well, I tell you put that on, and as soon as Bernard plays that bass, I'm in heaven. I'm gone.
Dance, 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 top 10 single.
Yeah, absolutely. It's them finding their footing, really. And at that point, they haven't got the kind of the dream team vocalists in place. They had Norma Jean Wright, who went off on a solo career pretty much immediately, and they did her album. And this is the difficult thing. This is the hardest part of doing this book. There were so many little paths to follow and try and pull it all together, and that was extremely difficult to do. And literally every song that they did in this period is in there, cross-checking and making sure I got it all right. But it was very, very difficult to do compared to the other ones I've done, which were much more linear and focused on one act. So it's been a challenge.
A lot of moving parts with the lineup.
Yeah, it's just following the path and trying to make it logical. And then you become aware that we're always talking about when an album is released as the key thing for us. You know, when did this album come out? But when you look at the organisation, quite key for them is when these things were being recorded because they were so busy.
Oh, yeah. So timeline was also a challenge.
In that way, yeah, it hadn't been so much as a problem before when doing Black Sabbath, Alice, and AC/DC. It's fairly linear and very easy to follow. But this was kind of like, okay, I mean, they're doing like 3 or 4 albums a year at some point.
Man.
For themselves and different artists. And to this day, I think, I mean, I did a signing session for this, and there were people who were, for example, we didn't know they did Carly Simon. And there's a huge song over here called Why. A very, very popular song, part of the Balearic kind of beat thing. And there were people in the record shop who were going, didn't know this was Chic. But it is, and they wrote it.
Yeah, they wrote Les Freak. That's the song that topped the charts in 1978 from their second album titled Say Chic. I want to talk about the music, but first talk about the origins of the lyrics and its connection with Studio 54.
Yeah, they were going to see, this is Niall and Bernard, who had been invited to see, I think it was Grace Jones at Studio 54. And they inferred there was a bit of kind of racism and a bit of a problem going on, but they weren't let in, basically. And they should have been allowed in. And so frustrated and angry, they went home and started writing. Originally, the title was, can we say this on your podcast?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
It was Fuck Off.
Which wouldn't have gone over well on the radio.
No. So I mean, that's because they're angry, and that's what they came up with. And that was them shouting that, the doorman, bouncer who hadn't let them in. And that's how it started, was with that sort of anger and volatility. And instead you get this kind of astonishing, very disco flavored track this time. And Le Freak is interesting because, there's a lot of songs, and you'll know about this in the music that you like, that you don't listen to them kind of anymore. You don't engage with them. You know them so well, like, Your Whole Lot of Love's Your Stairway to Heaven, Ain't Talking About Love, or whatever. You know them well. You don't even have to put them on. So what I'm trying to do with this book partly is to get people to go back and go, actually, I'm going to listen to that again, almost anew. That would be my hope, that people will go, I hadn't noticed that, I hadn't picked up on that.
Yeah, exactly. Like the strings on that track, right? That's the arrival of the celebrated Chic strings.
Oh.
And the vocalist duo of Alpha Anderson and Lucy Martin.
Alpha Anderson, actually, I'm telling the truth. I actually have goosebumps now just saying Alpha Anderson and Lucy Martin. That those two together are just incredible at what they do. And there's a lovely bit on The Freak where Alpha Anderson goes flat, deliberately, just slightly off. And she says, I'm sure you'll be amazed. And she goes flat on amazed. And you kind of hear delights in it when you hear it, I'm sure you'll be amazed. It just goes flat. And Niall was like, oh. And he thought, yeah, that kind of works. So it's just beautiful the way these little accents and these little details come in. One of the problems with the Chic vocalists, with Alpha and Lucy, is they sit so well in with the music. You never hear anybody talk about them outside of Chic fans. You don't hear anyone going, oh, one of my favourite singers is Alpha Anderson or Lucy Martin, unless you're a hardcore Chic fan. But what they do is they sit harmonically well within the music. It's kind of like... they're not above it generally. I'm not putting this terribly well, am I? It's like you notice them, but you don't.
Well, would you say it's much like Steely Dan?
Yeah.
Right? Where people always look to Donald Fagen, Walter Becker, but all these great musicians, which people will say there's a ton of great musicians that work with them, but the average person will not be able to cite those names.
Exactly that. Yeah. Thanks for coming up with that and helping me out. I think, yeah, if you said to people, tell me about Chic, you get Niall. People have mentioned Niall. You might get Bernard, Tony. But Alpha and Lucy, I don't think ever fully got the credit and respect they deserved at all.
Niall and Bernard, they worked with Sister Sledge for the 79 album, We Are Family. Title track, huge hit. You mentioned that. And that same year, Chic released the album Risque, another #1 single with Good Times. There's another song that to this day gets played all the time. You say that song is not overtly euphoric a song as it might seem to be on casual listening. What did Nile have to say about the irony of the lyrics?
Well, it's going back to that kind of the Dust Bowl era and the recession. So there's a lot of that in there. And if you actually listen to the lyrics, you pick that up. It's kind of about getting by, about getting through and coping. So it's when they're singing "These Are the Good Times," it's almost as though it's kind of like willpower and trying to believe that things will get better. So I think it's kind of quite under the radar on that. And of course, I know you're going to mention it, but I'll get in. But at the time that they were recording Good Times, John Deacon of Queen was sitting there in the control room. This is a fact. And while Another One Bites the Dust doesn't sound exactly like Good Times, you certainly got to say that he was kind of remembering a little bit what he'd heard from Bernard's bass part. That definitely must be so.
Inspired by it for sure.
Inspired is the word we're going to use. Absolutely. And Good Times, I think, is a candidate for Chic's best song, particularly if you go for the extended mix. And a key feature of it, which we had it a bit on Everybody Dance, you heard it on that, but this one has got this great Chic breakdown, and this is a part of a lot of Chic's best songs, is where they just drop the music down to one or two components, maybe the bass, maybe the drums, or both, or whatever, or just Niall's guitar, and then bring the instruments back in one by one by one by one by one till you get to the full sound again. And it's a quite magnificent trick that they pull on an awful lot of songs. You can hear it on I Want Your Love, you can hear it on Good Times when it drops right down to Bernard's bass.
That's interesting. Yeah, well, that's just going back to what your goal is, going back and listening to these songs that become a part of, they're almost in the background when you hear them. Give them a listen again and listen to that. I got to listen for that approach to the production.
It's brilliant. You'll hear, I mean, Good Times is as good a one to start with, and by the time you've finished and you actually focus on that, you'll be there going, man, I've got to listen to some more of these guys. But maybe one of the best breakdowns was on the album they did for their singer who'd gone solo, Norma Jean Wright. And there's a great song on there called I Like Love. And I've got to say that lyrics generally are not Chic's best suit. They just sort of fit the music and can often be a little bit maybe trite at times. But there is a very simplistic, life-affirming feel to a lot of their lyrics. I Like Love just does what it says on the tin. It's kind of like for anybody who's been in love, loves somebody, is missing somebody, happy about being with somebody. And that's what it does. And it's relentless in that. And you just have to give in and go, yeah, okay, I'm in. I'm along for the ride. And it's very life-affirming stuff, a lot of what they do.
Chris Sutton is the author of the Chic Organization, Every Album, Every Song. Say Chic and Risque, both top 10 and platinum selling albums. And as we know, disco had begun to fall on a favor at the beginning of the 80s. Chic released 4 albums, 1980's Real People, 1981's Take It Off, 1982's Tongue in Chic, and 1983's Believer. The albums and the singles from those didn't match the commercial success of the past, but that doesn't always mean that the quality of the work wasn't still there. Tell us about those albums, what you think of them. I think it's kind of mixed results. I know, well, there's one album there you weren't a big fan of. I think it might have been Believer.
Yeah, there's a definite sense. If anyone listening wants to go straight to the best Chic albums, everybody, I think, is going to say Chic and Risque. It's packed with hits that most people will know. The album tracks are also pretty strong. Going back then, At Last I'm Free is one of Chic's best songs, and it's a ballad. And that's an absolutely terrific track. Interestingly, on Real People, that's when Niall experiments with playing some rock lead guitar on the title track, and does it extremely well. I think you'd be very surprised if you play that and thinking, is that really Niall? Have they not got somebody else in? But yes, it is. There's a definite sense of the Chic. There's great moments on those albums. There's some really good songs, but there is a sense of them not really knowing where they're going or what to do anymore. It's very tight as a brand what they do and how that works. And it also became quite successful for other people, as we'll probably move on and look at their work directly with other people. That would be, I think, something be good to look at. But Chic, definitely the wheels start coming off in the 1980s. So you're looking at albums and you go, yeah, some crackers on there, some great songs. But the overall quality of the albums is not up there with the peak of, say, Chic and Risque.
For Nile and Bernard, though, at least they've got work. I mean, in fact, Nile specifically, he wasn't lacking work. So he was making, the paychecks were coming in, and a high point being part of the Diana Ross album from 1980. They were both part of that. Yeah, the album Diana.
I think the thing that did it was they did the Norma Jean Wright album in '78 called Norma Jean. That was their former singer on the first album, Chic. And it's a really good album, and there's some great songs on it, but it wasn't pulling up any trees or doing well sales wise. If you're a Chic fan, you've got to go listen to it because some wonderful stuff on there. But the big thing for them comes with that Sister Sledge, We Are Family album. Now, Sister Sledge were, going along okay, lower reaches of the charts, doing okay. And that album goes stratospheric, the We Are Family album. And it's got Thinking of You on it. It's got He's the Greatest Dancer, Lost in Music, the wonderful Lost in Music. These are big powerhouse, big songs. So what they'd done was to take a band who were doing okay and suddenly make them enormous. And they'd written all the songs, played on all the songs, brought the Chic backing choir of vocalists in on all the songs, produced it. So I think people watching in the industry, you'll know this, they'd be thinking like, if those guys can do that for Sister Sledge, what can they do for our artists, our people? And so in 1980, you get that Sheila and B Devotion, and Spacer, the absolutely phenomenal song Spacer is on that. And then the big one, Diana Ross, Upside Down, coming out, My Old Piano. And they turned in this fantastic record, which went, okay. And so they had it remixed, had her regular engineer, Ross Tirana, worked on it to make it more Diana Ross-like. They felt that it was too much of a Chic record, so they wanted to tone down the chicness and make it more of a Diana Ross-sounding record. When they put out the deluxe edition, you had the benefit of getting the Chic original mixes.
How do they sound?
Yeah, I mean, there are big winners like My Old Piano is just so much better on the original Chic mixes with this huge, long, jazzy solo from Nile Rodgers. And I think it sounds great, but equally so, some of the dynamics that Ross Tirana puts in on the remix are probably better than what Nile and Bernard got. Kind of dynamics doesn't seem to be such a big thing on their records. I've noticed when people have remixed or remastered their work, the dynamics tend to be better.
Well, let's get into Nile some more and the production work he did. He worked with so many classic rock artists, most notably David Bowie. He co-produced 1983's Let's Dance with Bowie. Huge hit album, hit singles, Modern Love, the title track, China Girl, Stevie Ray Vaughan on guitar, a then relatively unknown guitarist at the time. Talk about how Bowie, at that time, he's without a label and he's looking to make his biggest record yet. Why did he choose Nile to produce?
He chose Nile to produce because he wanted his biggest record yet.
There you go. Simple as that.
It is as simple as that. It really is as simple as that. It's a case of putting the David Bowie-ness onto whatever Nile and his band could contribute. And Nile used all of the Chic alumni who were available to him at that time. There were issues with Tony Thompson and there were issues with Bernard Edwards by then, which were down to reliability. And that was because of kind of issues that both guys, and Nile himself and probably everybody concerned in making records around that time, would have maybe had issues and challenges, shall we say. But Nile didn't want to ruin the sessions or delay the sessions on such an important album. So Bernard Edwards only plays on one track and Tony's, I think, on 2 or 3 or 4 tracks. Bernard Edwards is on Without You, which obviously is my favourite track on Let's Dance because it's our fullest set of Chic alumni that we get on the album, and I do really like that. It's a curious album, Let's Dance, when you look at it. It's certainly very much targeted at the mainstream, and the whole idea was that it would bring in people who weren't David Bowie fans. And I remember at the time it certainly did that. There were people buying that record who hadn't got the back catalogue on RCA or maybe got one or two items from it. And it did. It was a success. It's still his biggest selling album.
I remember it well as a kid that there were people in my neighborhood that had the cassette, knew nothing about Bowie's music prior to that.
Yeah. It sounds ridiculous to say that, doesn't it? But you go back and you think it really did push him to a completely new level. David Bowie, had all these hit albums, was taken to a new level. And when you look at the album, it's the sequencing is quite interesting. Side one is where the hits are, plus Without You. And then in side two, you get some songs by outside songwriters coming in as well. So it's not that I would say that it's anywhere near his best. I don't know anybody. I've never met anyone who would say it was David Bowie's best album. But it's his most successful album.
Stan Harrison played the sax and flute on the album. He told you about that experience. What did he have to say about working with Bowie and Nile?
Well, yeah, I mean, everybody, I interviewed a lot. Nobody has a bad word to say about working with Nile and recording sessions. They find him very attentive, a very easy person to work with and get on with. And surprisingly also, I thought David Bowie seems to be an amazingly easy guy for people to get on with. Sammy Figueroa talked going off and having something to eat and coming back for a nap while he'd recorded the percussion parts for Let's Dance. And, he sits there and then they roll the tape back and play it for David and he goes, yeah, that's great. Well done. And Stan Harrison had exactly the same kind of experiences as well. He found them very easy guys to work with. Bernard Edwards appears to be the one who would be more tricky, more of a disciplinarian, and more somebody who'd have people on point than Nile Rodgers was.
He produced 3 songs, Nile did, on Mick Jagger's She's the Boss from '85. He and Bernard, they appeared on a couple songs on Paul Simon's 1983 album, Hearts and Bones. And that same year, I didn't know this, they produced the In Excess single, Original Sin. Share the story of this one, now called in a special guest.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the thing when you're Nile Rodgers and you're recording with him. He's got his book handy, and he felt they needed some extra oomph on the backing vocals to handle that, and the harmony vocals. So he just calls Daryl Hall.
I got to listen to it again. Can you pick up on his voice in there?
Can I be totally honest with you? No,
right?
Not for me. No, but I'm not hearing where he is on it terribly well. But I can understand why In Excess were impressed by his ability to do that. And the other one from that era that we have to include is Madonna. I mean, that was her biggest album for ages. The Like a Virgin album, because you get unlike a Virgin, you get where Chic were and where Chic are going. So the actual band play on about half of the album when you look at the credits, and then on about half of the album it's Nile and the synth and so on.
But that's an example, Chris. I never knew that they were part of that album. How many people even know that? The hardcore fans know it.
I don't know anybody who does. I've never met anybody. I'm doing this book. People were going, Like a Virgin. In fact, when I did this signing session, I was telling that they were going like, really? Yeah, really. Yeah.
Did she talk about it a lot,
Nile has this thing where he's said in the past in interviews that people like Bowie and Madonna have done the PR and the publicity for their albums, but haven't exactly played up the contribution as much as he feels they could have done.
Yeah, I don't know any other way to really put it. I mean, they are partially responsible for the fact that we don't know these things. It's
a curious thing, isn't it? I mean, if you look at the Like a Virgin album, you look at that track list, and we're looking at, well, Like a Virgin, Material Girl, Dress You Up, a cover of Love Don't Live Here Anymore, Angel. It tails off towards the end, but you do get the best song on there for Chic fans is Shooby Doo, without a doubt. beautiful guitar part from Nile on it, and it's very, very cheeky in the sound on it. As I say, about half the album is the full Chic band, complete with backing vocalists, and everybody's on there. Brass section, strings, the works. And then the other half of the album is sort of Nile and Rob Sabino and synths and so on. So you hear that kind of thing going on some of the other tracks. But it is to all intents and purposes, yeah, another one, a Chic album. The difference here is they don't write anything. They're not involved in any of the writing on this one. It's purely Nile producing, doing the whole production, and then them playing on it. So you do get that difference this time around.
Let's get to the 90s. There was a Chic reunion. In the 90s, they released 92's Chicism, and then now released a solo album in 96 called Chic Freak and More Treats. Then there was a live Chic album released in 99 called Live at the Budokan. This was taken from shows in 1996. Sadly, Bernard's final performance, was it during the final show that he wasn't feeling well, and then he was urged to go to the hospital, didn't, and passed away?
It's the show you actually see on the DVD, which
Wow.
I'm going to call that now. You are literally watching the last performance of Bernard Edwards.
And how long after that show did he pass?
That night.
That night.
Yeah, maybe depending what time the show actually finished. I'm not sure what time he'd have gone to bed. Not sure. Maybe 3-4 hours.
And he pushed through that show. Niall was telling him before the show, we don't have to go on. Go to the emergency room. If you got to do that, do it. I'm worried about you.
Yeah, and if he'd done that, he would have saved his life. Probably.
Oh.
Probably.
What was the cause of death?
Well, I think he had heart attack, pneumonia. He was extremely ill. And Niall talks about how he woke up in the middle of the night with like a kind of a shove and a push and a feeling, and that was the exact moment. So apparently that Bernard Edwards had passed away.
So, in other words, he had a hunch that something was wrong, or did he literally hear?
It kind of woke him up in the night that something awful was happening.
Wow. How old? He was only in his, what would he have been in his 40s or 50s?
Yeah, I think so. I'd have to check how old he would have been. Not an old man.
Too young.
Stretch the imagination. Let's have a look.
Those are the tragic ones when something could have been done, but they feel like the show must go on. I'm going out there. I'm fine.
Yeah, he was good. I mean, on the Chicism album, is probably some of the best work that he'd done, I think, really. Bernard Edwards' bass playing is extremely good on it. Niall's good on it. I don't think the sound and the songs on the whole are as good as their 70s era. The vocals, I think, were a bit more soul-y than Alpha and Lucy had this kind of they kind of had this kind of glide over the songs that really worked with what they were doing, and they fitted in well. And I think the vocals stand out a bit more on Chicism for me, which is probably why I'm not quite so keen on them. And there are some moments on it. There are some good moments. There's 2 or 3 good songs on Chicism. But I think fundamentally, probably they've never really got back or got close. Maybe 1 or 2 times to that.
There was something that Bernard said to Niall during that Japan show that ultimately led to the new era, right? With Niall and Chic, because he hadn't intended to continue with Chic, but it was something Bernard said to him, right? When he looked out at the crowd.
Yeah, I mean, I think they realised then that what they got, the brand that they got was capable of going on for a lot longer, the popularity. I don't think they'd realised just how popular and how big Chic were. And they realised then Bernard's view would have been that anything that happened to him, that Niall should carry on with the band. It took him a while. And of course, then it becomes rebranded eventually as Nile Rodgers and Chic, which is fair enough, because there's nobody in that band really since then who goes back to the original Chic lineup other than Niall. And
what year would that have been? They had the 2018 album that they put out, Nile Rodgers and Chic, but what year did they reform? In the 2000s? In the 2000s, and they came back and they slowly built the brand up, and what they've been enormous over here, got to be said. I mean, Chic sell out over in the UK and Europe everywhere they go. I mean, they are enormous. And part of the reason for that, I don't know what happens in America with them or whether you get them over there, but
you see the set list that they can put together is phenomenal. In as much as if you were going out with your friends and you go into a festival or whatever, and you know how it goes, these guys are going to come on, and ladies, and they're going to play a load of songs that you know. They're popular songs. You even know the words to a lot of them, and you're going to have a good time.
A handful of songs that are just slam dunk, automatic. Crowd's going to go crazy when they hear it. Do they play the songs from the other artists that they worked with? Did they do the Diana Ross song?
Oh yeah, and Noel will always make sure that you're aware that the reason they're doing these songs is because we wrote them, we produced them. You know, these are as much our songs in a way. So they do Let's Dance, for example.
They do Let's Dance. Cool.
And they've even done Modern Love off that album. They've done some of the Madonna songs, Sister Sledge. They'll do stuff, and they can rotate the set around to cover many of these songs.
Yeah. So you put those songs in the set list. You've got what, 10, 11, 12 tracks that are automatic hits that are guaranteed.
I mean, they did it at Glastonbury this year, Nile Rodgers and Chic, and they just sort of effortlessly were one of the best, if not the best bands on the bill on the day, because they got this enormous crowd and they're going on and they're playing Chic songs, Sister Sledge, David Bowie, all these enormous hits. And the crowd know them, and the crowd are there, all jammed together on a hot day, having a great time.
Hey guys, we'll get back to the show, but first I want to tell you about an exclusive deal for Booked on Rock listeners. Get 15% off any purchase at oldglory.com. Over 300,000 officially licensed items covering music, sports, entertainment, and pop culture. Merchandise featuring legendary music artists like Bob Marley, The Beatles, Grateful Dead, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, and many, many more. Go to oldglory.com. Make sure to use the promo code BookedOnRock. Also find a link in this episode's show notes, or just go to bookedonrock.com and click on My Deals. Now, unfortunately, you weren't happy with the 2018 album, though. It's about time. There were three. It was hampered by three difficulties, you said.
Yeah. Did I get it down to three difficulties? Well, for start off, before the album came out, they released one of the best Chic songs on I'll Be There. And it was a phenomenal comeback. I've used that word a lot, phenomenal, I know, but this was just amazing. And it kind of used some samples, some bits from old Chic songs, and they got Alpha and Lucy back, and Fonzie Thornton were there singing as well. Absolutely amazing track, I'll Be There, loved it. By the time they'd reached the album, It's About Time. The pun being, of course, it's about time we did an album, you see. And it's chock-a-block full of guest vocalists, none of whom I want at all. I don't think they really added anything at all, much to the songs. The songs themselves are often not great. They're okay. There are moments where some of the songs are good, but it's not what it could have been. And I don't think that's ever possible, unfortunately.
And as far as the guest vocalist, who do we have?
Well, Elton John's on there. Lady Gaga is on there. And Lady Gaga is one of the ones where it goes a bit wrong. I mean, she does I Want Your Love, and I think that would have worked better if it had been done very differently. I think it's similar to the point where it doesn't work. I think that's one of the problems with it. And there are various other people who, to be honest, I've never really heard of.
Right, I'm looking through it here. Haley Steinfeld, Lunch Money Lewis.
Who are these people? I looked them up and I still didn't know.
Neo. Yeah, you would think, though, there was a Prince song that he was going to include on there, but when Prince passed away, he pulled it.
Yeah, that's a shame, wasn't it? Because that might have been a good song. It just feels a bit of a jumbled. And I've do you ever have records where you listen to them and they're kind of fatiguing?
Right.
And to me, it's one of those where I just feel tired about halfway through, the relentlessness of it.
I should clarify, it wasn't a Prince song. It was a song about Prince that Nile wrote. It was a conversation that he had with Prince.
Yeah, I can't see them ever releasing another studio album because he turned up in bargain bins and so on really quickly. You can buy it for like next to nothing. And it's a shame to say that, but these things happen, don't they? I mean, Niall turns up on people's records to this day. I mean, look what he did for Daft Punk. It's got to be one of the biggest records of the last 10, 20 years.
Have you ever heard his work there with Dave on Your Filthy Little Mouth, David Lee Roth?
Yeah.
Interesting album. It's panned by fans, and I think some critics appreciate it. It's very different from anything else that Dave put out.
Well, it will be. Yeah, he would be. Yeah, I mean, Niall's capable of doing that. I know when he worked with Brian Ferry, they just, for example, they get him in the studio and just tell him to plug in his guitar and just play. And I remember Niall, they said, well, what do you want me to do? And he was just do Nile Rodgers. So he was just chucking away on the guitar, and they just would record him playing for like half an hour or whatever and see what they got out of it. And he's absolutely brilliant. I mean, as the Daft Punk record, I say, I mean, that's one of the biggest kind of floor filler, party-tastic records probably ever of the last 10, 20 years. And that's Niall's guitar at the heart of that's doing that people love.
And he continues to work with other artists. He performs, he produces. Chic is still going. So he's doing good. I think, didn't Chic get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Or he did as a producer?
Not sure. I mean, he may, as a producer, very probably he would be in there. Chic in there, that would be an interesting one if they did. I mean, they deserve their place. They deserve the credit that they get. I mean, so many great albums and artists that they did. And I say the Carly Simon song they did, Why, is one of their best songs that they did for the Soup for One album. The Johnny Mathis album's really good, which eventually came out decades later. The Debbie Harry album is
that's the other one, yeah.
Yeah, that's probably for me one of their least successful works from that era. You got Debbie Harry and Chris Stein coming in with what they bring to the table, and you got Chic coming in with what they bring, and the potential sounded really impressive, but the album never really kind of takes off. Has moments, but it's like it sort of grinds and doesn't necessarily work so well for me. And also, I think, loath as I am to say this, but Debbie herself gets a bit exposed at times on the album. But I mean, this could be controversial, maybe, but I wouldn't say that Debbie Harry's got the greatest voice for me. That's my personal opinion. I think if she sticks within her range of what she can do, she's fine. But at times on the album with Chic, it just doesn't sound quite right to me.
Pushing too hard?
Yeah, I mean, you actually hear this on... if you listen to the Like a Virgin album with Madonna, she has a range, and when she's in that range, she's really, really, really good. Really, really good at what she can do. And Shooby Doo is my favourite song on that album. And Madonna's well inside her comfort range, and she's terrific, absolutely terrific. As she's on Material Girl as well. But there's a couple of tracks... on the Debbie Harry album where you can actually hear that you can tell what Alpha Anderson or Lucy Martin would have been able to do with those songs, how they would have suited their voices.
Well, going back to David Lee again, that's been the criticism of him. If he stays within his range, it's great, but he tries to go outside of his range, right, and he continues to do so, and he's been doing it for years, and people are just miffed by that. They don't understand why not just sing the Van Halen songs the way they were sung initially, which they're in a range you can do. But he's trying to sing higher. But yeah, that's their prerogative.
Yeah, I don't want to kind of annoy anyone who's listening or talking about this kind of thing. But these really are facts that everybody has a range. You go to the top of your range, you could be pushing it and you might struggle. That is what happens to almost any singer. We're not talking about people like Whitney Houston and so on and so forth, or, you know, these people have got these incredible ranges and can just do anything. My dad was a singer back in the day, and he used to listen to the records I was playing, and he would say, this guy's not a singer, or whatever. And what my dad meant was there are people who can do scales and can sing and are singers, And then in his book, there were other people that I've been listening to who got a good voice.
Well, yeah, there's a singer and then there's a vocalist, right? Two different things. And they're both, you can be great at one and great at the other.
But his point would be that if you're a singer, you're not going to get nodes and so on and struggle and losing your voice, etc., because you're trained and you learn this. And a case in point is how Davy Bowie went for singing lessons sometime around the Heroes era, and suddenly starts warbling and kind of doing these scales and things which he never used to do before because he's been taking lessons. And then you get people who've got great voices and it would just kind of wreck their voices. And now Roth might be somebody like that. I don't know, where maybe he has kind of wrecked his voice over the years.
Yeah, I mean, a great vocalist is somebody. It doesn't matter what their range is. It's just the way they present the lyrics, what they put into it emotionally, or the character in the voice, things they'll do. And Dave is, to me, one of the greatest vocalists of all time. So just to put that out there, but.
There's people will not. I'm a big fan of Alice Cooper, and I don't think I would call him a great singer, but I'd call him a great vocalist.
Yep, exactly.
And something like Under My Wheels, even School's Out, he puts that across, and my God, he puts it across really, really well. But if you listen to those songs, and if you try at home singing along to them yourself, you're going to feel the strain.
Find the Booked on Rock website at bookedonrock.com. There you can find all the back episodes of the show, the latest episode in video and audio, links to all of the platforms where you can listen to the podcast, plus all the social media platforms. We're on Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and X. Also, check out the Booked on Rock blog, find your local independent bookstore, find out all the latest hot rock book releases, and before you go, check out the Booked on Rock online store. Pick up some Booked on Rock merch. It's all at bookedonrock.com. The Chic Organization, every album, every song. The book's out now. Find it wherever books are sold. You can look for it at your nearest bookstore. Go to bookedonrock.com to find your nearest independent bookstore. Now, people can find you online, Chris, in maybe just a few days or by the time this episode's out, online on your own website?
Well, yeah, the website should be up in a couple of days from now, so I'm not sure when you're putting this out. But yeah, I've decided to do that partly so that I can kind of have somewhere people can see the books that I've been doing. I'm also going to do lots of reviews, back catalogue things, and put things up about what I think about old albums, particularly the older albums, and then link to podcasts and YouTube. And this kind of happened when I did the Sparks book, which you were kind enough to have me on early this year.
I got great responses from fans.
Well, God, do you know something? I've never had such a big response to anything I've done in my life.
I mean, boy, yeah, I kind of looked a little silly because I didn't know much about them, and then people are like, I got these people commenting of how hardcore of a fan they are, and they know so much about them. But again, I don't mind. I'll embarrass myself in pursuit of discovering something new. I mean, it's never too late. That's for sure.
Well, partly thanks to you. They were kind of coming and battering down on my email and my door and
nice.
And messages. And
cool.
But all very nice people. I've got to say, they've all been lovely. I mean, wonderful people. And thanks to yourself and all of these people. That's why Sparks in the 80s is happening right now. I'm working on that as we speak because of all those people.
And we should will it be chrissutton.com? Will that be the website? Is it simple as that?
It's called wordsandmusic.online.
Ah, so okay. Words and music.
Online. And it's so new that I was working on it before talking to you.
Words and music.
Online.
.online. Remember that, folks. I'll put it in the show notes too.
And it'll be up in a day or so, and it'll have links. I'm going to go and find all your stuff on YouTube and do links to the conversations that we've had.
All right. Now, can you share what we were talking about before recording? What do you have in the works? You've got 2, 3 books?
3. The Sabbath and Dio one took longer than I expected it to, and that's partly because the Chic Organisation one was so consuming and ridiculous in terms of the scope that's in it. Do you know, there is no other book out there, I think, that covers so many artists that I know of in this way. But Sabbath and Dio is now finally done and should be out, I'm guessing, in the next couple of months.
Oh, man. Black Sabbath and Dio. Okay.
And that also includes Heaven and Hell. So we've we've gone to those albums.
Yeah, the reformed lineup.
All of anything with Tony Geezer and Ronnie and so on, and has been covered, including all the live albums. There's a lot more than you might think, live recordings, and some very interesting interviews in that about the remix of the Live Evil album, for example, which was Wyn Davis did, which is To Die For, absolutely phenomenal. So that's coming out. And then I'm working on Sparks in the 80s, and I'm also working on an entire book on Alice Cooper's $1 Billion Babies, which nobody knows till now.
Oh, so you're going to break down the whole album, the tracks.
The album, the tour, the 1973 tour, and I've got more people to talk to me than did last time around. So there's some new names that are going to be featured talking about that. And I'm not sure how that's going to finish up that book. I know what I would like it to be, which would be like a coffee table book.
Okay. And we're talking 2026 release?
If I'm very lucky.
Yeah, okay.
It just depends.
But we've got the Sabbath and Dio one to look forward to next.
I mean, the thing with the Sabbath and Dio one was always about the name, I think, of the band. And I honestly think that they shouldn't have called it Black Sabbath when Dio came in. I think that you can completely understand why.
For marketing reasons.
And that really is the only reason to do that. I think it was such a new, phenomenal project that it deserved to have its own name. I think Ronnie James Dio never got the credit he deserved. And by that, I mean, he was the singer in Rainbow, and he come from Rainbow. But I only realised how much he must have contributed to Rainbow when I heard Heaven and Hell.
Yeah. By the way, I didn't speak to you when Ozzy passed. Just your quick thoughts on what was going through your mind when you heard that he passed away, and your thoughts on that final concert that he would courageously did, really. I mean, now when you know in hindsight that he wouldn't be around much longer after that.
Well, to be totally honest with you, I didn't think he was going to be around much longer when I saw the concert. I was actually shocked when I saw him on the stage. And you could actually see, I thought, that how much of an effort it was to do what he did. It wasn't actually a surprise. I know a few people who have said the same, that none of us was surprised when he passed away. Perhaps not as quickly as he did. But I'd actually been around Birmingham. We've been around Birmingham, going to all the places where there's the bench and the...
Right, we should mention you're from Birmingham.
Yeah, that's right. So we'd gone into Birmingham for a gig and stuff, and we went around and did all the tour of all the places to look at, and then he passed away. The reaction in Birmingham surprised me. I think some years ago it would have been Black Sabbath fans, maybe some others, but this, you're looking at almost the entire city. I didn't expect that.
There'll never be another like him.
No, I did spend an afternoon with him once. That's when I met him, and he was a really, really nice guy then. And that was on his first tour, Blizzard of Oz. And he made his first appearance back in Birmingham, and he'd done a signing session at Virgin Records in Birmingham. And, you got the signatures and stuff, and we're hanging around, and there was only about 2 or 3 of us left. And he said, "Oh, we're going back to the hotel now. Do you want to come for a drink?" So you're thinking, okay, well, we're not going to fit in the car. But there wasn't a car. You literally just walked through Birmingham city centre, down Corporation Street to the hotel. And a lot of people didn't know who he was. Would have been different years later. But at that point, 1981, he was still kind of not that well known.
Were you there in a working situation or as a fan?
I used to work in Birmingham city centre, so it meant you could always get to the Odeon or the town hall venues. And I very, very quickly learned if you got to any of these venues in the afternoon, if you had a long lunch hour or you finished work early, you could meet anybody. I used to go to like the Odeon and go down the side ramp when they were unloading all the gear for whatever gig. The band would turn up and they'd pose for photos, sign autographs.
That's so cool.
And they were absolutely fine about that. And I got into so many sound checks, countless sound checks that I watched. And they were absolutely fine about it. Come the actual like 6, 7 o'clock time, and it'd be like batten down the hatches, ready for the gig and all that. And then you couldn't meet anybody.
That just says a lot about Ozzy, though. He just wants to hang with the fans. Hey, you guys want to come along? Let's go.
Well, he did, and it was him and Bob Daisley, Lee Kerslake, Randy Rhodes, who was a lovely guy, very, very, very quiet guy. Didn't have hardly anything to say, really. And Ozzy was actually quite quiet and down to earth. People forget this. He'd turn it on stage, but off stage, he wasn't like that at all. I think he becomes like that as time goes on. He starts to talk about who Ozzy is and the Prince of Darkness and all this sort of business. He certainly wasn't doing that back in 81 when I met him.
Chris Sutton, as always, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Eric. It's always a pleasure.
That's it. It's in the books.